Captain Daniel Hayes sat in the command chair of the Earth exploration vessel Discovery, watching the stars move across his screen. The ship had been traveling for 3 years, visiting new worlds and gathering information about the galaxy. It was peaceful work, away from the politics of Earth. Daniel liked it that way. Then the distress signal came. It was weak, almost lost in the static of space. Daniel leaned forward. The signal came from Station Zeta, a research facility on the edge of the Orion Arm. The base studied alien life and gathered resources for Earth. It was small, with only 80 people working there. "Sir, we are receiving a distress call," Lieutenant Maria said from the communications station. Her voice was calm, but Daniel could see the tension in her shoulders. "It is from Station Zeta. They are under attack." Daniel's hand moved to the armrest of his chair. Under attack meant one thing in this part of space. The collective had found them. They were the nightmare of the galaxy. They were a species that consumed everything in their path. They had destroyed 17 star systems. Every alien race in known space feared them. The Galactic Council, made of the oldest and most powerful species, had warned Earth to stay away from territory. But Station Zeta sat near the border, and sometimes fate did not care about warnings. "How many ships are attacking?" Daniel asked. "Sensors show 15 capital ships and 40 smaller vessels," reported. Her fingers moved across her console. "The station is returning fire, but their weapons are not strong enough." Daniel stood up. He knew what the protocols said. Earth had written clear rules. If a human settlement faced a threat too large to defeat, the order was to run. Abandon the station. Save the ship. Save the crew. Do not risk the Discovery for 80 people on a research base. It was the logical choice. It was the safe choice. Daniel had never been good at logical or safe. "Set a course for Station Zeta. Maximum speed," he commanded. "Sir," looked up in shock. "That will take us directly into combat with the fleet." "I know," Daniel said. He moved to stand beside her, looking at the tactical display. The blips representing ships surrounded Station Zeta like wolves around a wounded animal. "We are going to save them." "Captain, with respect, our weapons are not equal to the ships. We will be destroyed," said Commander Robert from the tactical station. Daniel nodded. Robert was correct. The Discovery was designed for exploration, not war. Their weapons were good for self-defense against small threats, but against 15 heavy warships, they would lose. They would all die. "Then we will need to be smart," Daniel said. He studied the positions of the fleet. Their ships were arranged in a tight formation, perfect for protecting the station from orbital strikes. It was also their weakness. "What is the composition of the force?" Robert studied his console. 2 battleships, 6 heavy cruisers, 7 destroyers. The smaller vessels appear to be support craft. Daniel moved closer to the tactical display. His mind worked fast. They were strong, but they were predictable. They relied on overwhelming force and superior technology. They did not expect to be surprised. "We hit them here," Daniel said, pointing to the gap between 2 of the battleships. "We strike at the point where their shields overlap. Then we run at this angle, drawing their fire away from the station." "Captain, that will not work," Robert said. "Even if we breach their shields, we do not have the firepower to cause serious damage." Daniel smiled. "No, but the station can. While we have their attention, Station Zeta fires everything they have at the ships we damage. The commanders will be confused about where the threat is coming from. It will buy time." "Time for what?" asked. "For us to hurt them in ways they do not expect," Daniel said. He turned to address the entire bridge crew. "All hands, this is Captain Hayes. We are going into combat. I know this is dangerous. I will not lie to you. But there are 80 people on that station, and they are counting on us. We are going to make the pay for every moment they spend attacking Earth personnel. Are you with me?" A chorus of "yes, sir" echoed through the bridge. The Discovery accelerated toward the fleet. Daniel felt the familiar tightness in his chest that came before battle. Fear and duty mixed together, creating a strange sense of clarity. As they approached, Daniel gave his orders. The ship's weapons, modest as they were, targeted the 2 battleships. The shields flared bright as the first shots struck them. The ships were massive, armored in thick metal and protected by shields that could withstand meteor strikes. But Daniel did not aim for the shield generators. He aimed for the communication arrays. The first battleship lit up with internal explosions. Its shields flickered. That was the moment Daniel had been waiting for. Station Zeta, coordinating with the Discovery, fired their plasma cannons directly at the damaged battleship. The concentrated fire tore through the shields and punched holes in the hull. They responded with fury. Their weapons turned toward the Discovery. Alarms screamed through the ship as enemy fire struck their shields. "Hold position," Daniel commanded. His voice was steady even as his ship shook around him. "We stay right here, we keep their attention." Robert, damage report. "Shields at 60%, reported. "They are hitting us hard." "Then we hit them harder," Daniel said. The next salvo from the Discovery targeted the second battleship's propulsion system. Again, Station Zeta followed with heavy fire. The second battleship went dark as its engines exploded. The commander, faced with two crippled capital ships and an enemy that refused to flee, made a decision. He ordered a full assault on the Discovery. Every weapon focused on the small human ship. Daniel knew this was coming. He had planned for it. "Activate the electromagnetic pulse charge I had installed last year, the one we took from that derelict station." "Captain, that will damage our systems," said. "I know, do it," Daniel ordered. The pulse burst outward from the Discovery like an invisible wave. It was not strong enough to destroy the ships, but it was strong enough to disrupt their targeting systems for crucial seconds. "Run," Daniel commanded. "Maximum speed heading 270. The Discovery jumped forward, leaving the ships behind. The enemy vessels tried to pursue, but they were slower, and their targeting systems were still recovering from the electromagnetic pulse. Station Zeta launched another volley, hitting one of the heavy cruisers and destroying it completely. The fleet regrouped and prepared for a coordinated assault, but Daniel did not stay to fight. Earth was in chaos when Captain Daniel Hayes returned home. The news of humanity's conflict with the had spread across every continent. Some people celebrated Hayes as a hero who had defended human lives. Others called him reckless for dragging the entire species into a war with an enemy they could not defeat. The United Earth government called an emergency session. Representatives from every nation gathered in the capital city. The debate was fierce. Some wanted to negotiate with to offer peace and hope the aliens would accept it. Others wanted to flee, to send ships to distant corners of the galaxy where they would never find them. A few wanted to fight. Daniel stood before the assembly and spoke simply. He did not use fancy words or make grand promises. "We have 4 months before they arrive in force," he said. "In that time we can prepare or we can hide. If we hide, we will be hunted forever. They do not stop. They consume everything. There is nowhere in the galaxy far enough to run. But if we fight smart, we have a chance." "A chance against General Stone shook her head. "No one has ever defeated 17 civilizations have tried. All 17 are gone." "They have never fought a species like humanity," Daniel replied. "We are adaptable, we are creative, we do not fight like other species, and more than that, we are not alone." This caught everyone's attention. Daniel explained his plan. They had enemies scattered throughout the galaxy, species that had been conquered and enslaved, species that had lost worlds and populations to the hunger for expansion. These species had no hope of defeating the alone, but together with human leadership and human creativity, they might have a chance. The Earth government accepted the plan. Resources were allocated. The military began recruiting. Scientists and engineers worked day and night to create new weapons by combining human designs with alien technology. Daniel himself traveled to meet the species that might become Earth's allies. The first contact was with a species of traders and merchants. They lived in great orbital stations and controlled trade routes across half the galaxy. They had suffered under taxation and control. Their leader, a named Merchant Prime Kelvin, agreed to provide resources and supplies to the human war effort. "We sell weapons, not ideals," Kelvin said to Daniel. "But we will profit more from a free galaxy than an enslaved one. You have my support, human captain." The second contact was harder. There were warriors, a species that had lost there to the 300 years ago. They had been refugees ever since, living on colony worlds and space stations. Their leader, Warrior Queen, was skeptical. "Why should we trust you?" she asked. "You are untested, your species is young, you have no history." Daniel understood. They had been betrayed before, they had fought and lost. They had learned to expect failure. "You should not trust me because of my history," Daniel said. "You should trust me because I am willing to die for this cause. not because it is noble, but because the alternative is slavery or extinction. They will come for your people again. The only question is whether you will face them with help or alone. Studied him with eyes that seemed to see inside his soul. Finally, she nodded. "The will fight," she said. "We have nothing left to lose and everything to gain." The third species was the telepaths who had been enslaved for generations. They had been forced to use their mental powers to control populations and maintain peace in conquered worlds. When they finally freed them, they had become broken, traumatized by the connection they were forced to maintain with the hostile minds of their captors. Their leader, Sage, met Daniel in a dark chamber. They did not like bright light. They were weakened by years of captivity. "You ask us to rejoin a war," said through words that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "We have already fought thee in the deepest way possible, through the connection of minds. We lost." "I do not ask you to fight the way you fought before," Daniel said. "I ask you to use your strength in a new way. They are organized through a central command structure. What if that structure could be broken? What if their leaders became confused and unable to coordinate? What if your minds could create that confusion?" His eyes opened wide. For the first time, the sage seemed to consider hope. "You ask the impossible," said. "Yes," Daniel agreed. "But so did when they tried to conquer the galaxy with force alone. We will break them with strategy, adaptability, and cooperation." They joined the alliance. Back on Earth, Dr. Sarah Washington led a team of scientists working on a revolutionary weapons system. They had recovered fragments of technology from the damaged ships Daniel had fought. By analyzing this technology, they discovered something crucial. The ships were built for efficiency, not flexibility. Their defensive systems had specific patterns, specific weaknesses. By combining human improvisation with this knowledge, Washington and her team created new weapons. Not the fleet appeared in Earth's solar system like a dark cloud moving across the sun. 30,000 ships blocked the sky. They filled the space between Earth and the outer planets. The planet below went dark as the alien vessels cast shadows across the surface. The Galactic Council made an official announcement. Earth was lost. All non-essential personnel were being evacuated. The oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy had written humanity off as dead. But humanity refused to die. Captain Daniel Hayes commanded the combined fleet of Earth and forces. They were vastly outnumbered. They had 30,000 ships. The Alliance had 5,000. On paper, the odds were impossible. But papers did not fight wars. People did. The first battle began near Mars. The fleet moved inward toward Earth, expecting no real resistance. What they found was a coordinated assault that came from unexpected directions. The Alliance fleet did not meet thee in straight combat. Instead, they attacked the outer edges of the formation, striking weak points and disappearing before the enemy could respond. Human pilots flew in patterns that confused targeting computers. Warriors used their superior tactical knowledge to predict movements. Engineers coordinated supply lines and repair stations. Telepaths sensed confusion and fear spreading through the command structure. The first capital ship was destroyed when human planes flew directly into its engines while detonating specialized charges. The ship exploded in a massive fireball. 200,000 tons of alien technology fell back into space. The commander, Supreme Leader Vex, was not prepared for this kind of resistance. They did not understand why the humans did not surrender. Other species died when faced with overwhelming force. Other species submitted. Human species did not. Vex ordered a massive assault on the Alliance fleet. 50,000 ships turned to face 5,000 Allied vessels. It should have been a massacre. It was a battle instead. The humans used tactics that they had never encountered. They used their smaller, faster ships to dart between vessels, striking and vanishing. They used coordinated electromagnetic pulses to disable entire sections of the fleet. They used psychological warfare, broadcasting messages about the weakness and fear spreading through ranks. For the first time, they lost more ships than their enemy lost. Over 3 weeks, the battle raged across Earth's solar system. They lost thousands of ships. The Alliance lost hundreds. More importantly, they lost the certainty that had always protected them. They lost the belief that they could not be defeated. A crucial moment came when Sage managed to establish a telepathic connection with the command structure. The telepathic network that held the collective together was vast and powerful, but it had also made the predictable. Using the collective power of all telepaths, created waves of confusion and false orders through the command network. For 6 hours, the fleet operated in chaos. Ships received conflicting orders. Commanders lost contact with their superiors. The unified force that had conquered 17 civilizations fell into disorganization. In those 6 hours, the Alliance dealt more damage than they had in the entire previous battle. When the finally restored order, Supreme Leader Vex made a decision. He would not continue the frontal assault. Instead, he would change tactics. The fleet divided into smaller groups. They struck at the Alliance fleet from multiple directions simultaneously. They targeted supply lines. They attacked communications stations. They used their superior numbers to grind down the enemy through constant assault. The Alliance fleet was pushed back. They lost ground, they lost ships, they lost people. But they did not lose their will. Captain Daniel Hayes coordinated the retreat of his forces. He kept the fleet together even as the pressed harder and harder. He made the choice to sacrifice less valuable ships to save more valuable ones. He made the choice to retreat from Mars and Venus to make a stand closer to Earth. The final and most brutal battle took place in Earth's orbit. 30,000 ships surrounded 5,000 Alliance vessels. The planet below had been evacuated to underground shelters. Billions of humans watched the battle from beneath the ground. The battle lasted for 48 hours without pause. Humans fought alongside and ships crashed into each other. Weapons that had been considered science fiction became reality. The space around Earth filled with debris and fire. At the critical moment, when the Alliance fleet was nearly broken, and Supreme Leader Vex was preparing the final assault on Earth itself, Captain Daniel Hayes did something completely unexpected. He broadcast a message directly to Vex. Not a battle cry, not a threat, but a simple statement of fact. "You are the most powerful military force in the galaxy," Hayes said. "You have conquered 17 civilizations, you have never been defeated, and now you face a species you have never encountered before. We are humans. We do not surrender. We do not give up. We do not accept that we cannot win. This means one of two things will happen. Either we will destroy you or you will destroy us, but you will never conquer us. We will fight until every last human is dead." So the question is, Supreme Leader, are you prepared for a war that will last forever? The message echoed across the command frequencies. For a long moment there was silence. Then something changed in the fleet. The pressure lessened. The assault slowed. For the first time, the commander faced the reality that he could not win, not in the way he understood victory. The Alliance fleet, battered and broken but still fighting, began to push back. They recovered ground. Supreme Leader Vex regrouped his forces at a staging area 3 light-years from Earth. He had lost thousands of ships and millions of soldiers, but the collective still controlled vast resources. More ships were being built. More soldiers were being trained. They would return, and this time they would not make the same mistakes. However, something unexpected happened. Some began to question Vex's leadership. They were bred for conquest, but they were also intelligent. A few of their commanders had realized something crucial. The humans had not been defeated because they were weak. They had been victorious because they were different. A group of leaders approached Supreme Leader Vex with a dangerous proposal. What if, instead of fighting the humans, they learned from them? What if the answer to the human threat was not destruction, but change? Vex rejected the proposal with fury. He ordered the execution of the commanders who had suggested it. But the idea had been planted. The seeds of doubt were growing. Meanwhile, Captain Daniel Hayes made an announcement that shocked the galaxy. He offered the peace. "I'm broadcasting this message to all vessels and all colonies," Hayes said, his voice steady and clear. "I speak on behalf of the allied governments of Earth, and the peoples. We offer you peace, not surrender, not defeat, but peace. You have conquered 17 civilizations through force. You have ruled the galaxy through fear. But we have shown that fear can be broken, force can be matched. Your way has led only to endless war. We offer you another way. We offer you a chance to stop fighting and start building. A chance to trade instead of conquer. A chance to grow together instead of alone." The message spread across the communication networks. Soldiers who had known only war their entire lives heard words about peace. Workers who had built weapons to destroy heard about cooperation. They had never experienced anything like this. Supreme Leader Vex was enraged. He called an assembly of all leaders and made his position clear. The offer of peace was a trick, a human deception designed to weaken them from within. They would prepare their largest assault yet. They would return to Earth with an army so massive that no force in the galaxy could stop them. "We are the," Vex declared. "We conquer, we rule, we destroy. This is our nature. Any who doubt this are traitors to our kind." Thousands of supported Vex. They began construction on a new fleet of incredible size. New weapons were developed. New strategies were created. They prepared to end humanity once and for all. But the faction was not the only group of working in secret. The more progressive leaders, those who had questioned Vex, began their own work. They were fewer in number, but they were dedicated. They established hidden communication with Captain Hayes. They began preparing their own plan. 3 months after Hayes's peace offer, the new assault force was ready. 35,000 ships, larger and more powerful than before. Enough to overwhelm the Alliance fleet that had been damaged in the previous battle. Enough to conquer Earth and ensure dominance for another 1,000 years. The fleet began its journey to Earth. But some things stopped it. The dissident leaders, using their positions within the military, managed to sabotage critical systems on 40% of the fleet. Ships lost propulsion. Weapons failed. Communication systems went offline. What should have been a unified assault became a scattered force. Supreme Leader Vex realized what had happened. He was being betrayed from within his own military. In his rage, he ordered the execution of the dissident leaders, but he was too late. The damage had been done. The diminished fleet, still massive but no longer overwhelming, reached Earth for the second time. The Alliance fleet was ready. They had rebuilt. They had recovered. They had learned from the previous battle and were stronger. The second great battle began near Earth, and it was the most brutal conflict the galaxy had ever seen. The remaining fleet, driven by Vex's determination to prove supremacy, fought with absolute ferocity. There was no mercy on either side, no surrender, only the clash of two civilizations fighting for survival. For 72 hours, the battle raged. Ships exploded into fire. Weapons tore through armor and shields. Thousands died with each passing minute. Captain Daniel Hayes was seriously wounded when a weapon penetrated his ship's bridge. He was burned and bleeding, but he refused to leave his post. He continued to command the fleet from his medical chair, directing tactics even as his body failed around him. The turning point came when the Warrior Queen personally led an assault on Vex's command ship. The two leaders, human and fought against impossible odds. The battle was brutal and violent, with no quarter asked or given. But the humans and their allies were not fighting for domination. They were fighting for freedom. That difference mattered. Its warriors succeeded in reaching Vex's command ship. In the battle that followed, Supreme Leader Vex was defeated. He fell before weapons, and with him fell the belief in absolute conquest. The moment Vex died, the faction lost its conviction. Some commanders fled, others surrendered. A few continued to fight, but without unified leadership, they were destroyed. The fleet was broken. In the aftermath, something unexpected happened. The progressive leaders, those who had worked against Vex, approached the Alliance with a proposal. They were ready to accept Hayes's offer of peace. They wanted to join a new government, one that included both the Alliance species and the... Captain Daniel Hayes, though wounded and exhausted, agreed to hear them. 6 months after the battle, the Treaty of Earth was signed aboard the reconstruction of Captain Daniel Hayes's original command ship, the Discovery. The ship had been destroyed in the final battles, but it had been rebuilt by engineers from every allied species. It was no longer a human vessel. It belonged to all of them. The treaty was simple in its goals, but revolutionary in its scope. For the first time in galactic history, multiple species sat as equals in a government designed to serve all their peoples. The collective was dissolved. In its place came the coalition of free species, a government based on cooperation rather than conquest. They provided the economic framework, using their centuries of trade experience to establish fair exchange rates between all member species. They provided the military structure, organizing the security forces to protect all colonies and trade routes equally. They provided the wisdom, using their telepathic abilities to bridge gaps in understanding between species that had fought each other for generations. And humanity provided something that no other species could. They provided hope. Humans believed that peace was possible even when it seemed impossible. They believed that enemies could become allies. They believed that sacrifice and cooperation could accomplish what force alone never could. The reconstruction effort began immediately. worlds that had been ravaged by the needed to be rebuilt. Billions of refugees needed new homes. The economy of the entire galaxy needed to be reorganized. It was work that would take generations. Captain Daniel Hayes was offered the greatest honor the Coalition could give. They asked him to become supreme leader of all Allied forces and to lead the entire government. It was a position of absolute power, the same position that Supreme Leader Vex had held. Hayes refused. "I will not lead the galaxy," he said at the official ceremony. "No single person should have that power. Leadership must be shared. The strength of the alliance comes from all of us working together, not from one being controlling all of us." Instead, Hayes proposed a new structure. A council of leaders from each species would make decisions together. Every voice would matter. Every species would have power. The Galactic Council, the ancient organization that had watched Earth's rise with skepticism, was dissolved. In its place came the Coalition Council, made of equals. Daniel Hayes chose a different role. He became the Director of Peace and Reconstruction. He would spend his life helping rebuild what the war had destroyed. He would help build the relationships between species that would prevent another war like this from ever happening again. Dr. Sarah Washington, the scientist who had created the hybrid weapons, took a leadership role in the Science and Innovation Division of the Coalition. She worked to ensure that all species had access to technological advancement, not just the most powerful ones. Warrior Queen established the Coalition Peace Corps, an organization dedicated to keeping peace across all member worlds. Young humans, and worked together to solve problems, prevent conflicts, and build understanding. Sage led the Integration Initiative, helping species that had been enemies learn to trust each other. The telepaths worked with trauma counselors to help soldiers and civilians heal from the horrors of war. 1 year after the signing of the Treaty of Earth, the first major test of the new government came. A border dispute emerged between human colony worlds and former controlled territories. Both sides felt they had legitimate claims to the same resources. In the old galaxy, this would have led to war. But this was a new galaxy. The dispute was brought before the Coalition Council. Leaders from all species listened to both sides. They negotiated. They compromised. A solution was found that satisfied both parties. For the first time a territorial dispute ended not in violence but in agreement. Years passed. The galaxy transformed. Trade routes that had been closed during the war were reopened. Species that had never communicated began sharing culture and knowledge. They taught other species meditation and mental disciplines. They shared financial systems and banking practices. They taught honor codes and tactical philosophy. Humans taught resilience, adaptability, and the belief that the impossible was just the untried. New technologies emerged from the combined knowledge of all species. Medical systems advanced by centuries. Transportation systems improved beyond anything any single species could have developed alone. Art and music and literature flourished as different species discovered each other's creative traditions. 10 years after the war, Captain Daniel Hayes finally returned home to Earth. He had been traveling across the galaxy, visiting worlds that were being rebuilt, meeting with communities that had been shattered by war. He had been working without pause, driven by a need to heal what he had helped break. Earth had changed. New buildings had been constructed to symbolize the unity of species. The spaceport was filled with ships of alien design, docked and being loaded with goods for trade. The atmosphere was no longer fearful. It was hopeful. Hayes walked through the streets of Earth's capital city toward the central plaza. Millions of people gathered there, both human and alien. News had spread that Captain Daniel Hayes, the human who had declared war on the and lived to see peace, was coming home. Above the plaza, the sky was filled with ships. Thousands of vessels, crewed by beings from dozens of species, came to celebrate humanity's role in the transformation of the galaxy. Hayes stood in the center of the plaza and looked up at those ships. He thought about the journey that had brought him here. He thought about the 80 people on Station Zeta who had needed rescuing. He thought about the billions who had fought and suffered and survived. He thought about the future that they had all built together. A young human girl, no more than 8 years old, approached him. She was holding the hand of a young child, the two of them walking together, unafraid of each other. "Captain Hayes, are you the human who started the war?" the girl asked. Hayes smiled. "I defended people who needed defending. War came because others wanted it. But what we have now is more important than that war. What we have now is peace. Will there be more wars? The child asked. I hope not, Hayes said. But if there are, I hope that next time all species will stand together against it the way we stood together during the conflict. That is how we prevent war, not through fear of one species dominating all the others, but through the strength of all of us united. The two children nodded, their species differences meaning nothing to them. Hayes turned back to look at the sky. The ships of all the allied species moved in formation, a visual representation of the unity that the galaxy had found. Where there had once been conquest and fear, there was now cooperation and hope. The greatest strength of humanity had not been weapons or tactics or military strategy. It had been the simple belief that peace was possible, the belief that enemies could change, the belief that even the most feared species in the galaxy could choose a different path. That belief had changed everything. And standing in the center of Earth, under a sky filled with the ships of a unified galaxy, Captain Daniel Hayes finally allowed himself to believe that the war was truly over, and the real work of building peace could begin. The age of conquest is over, he told the assembled leaders. The age of unity begins. We will build something new together, not as masters and slaves, not as conquerors and conquered, but as equals. The leaders agreed. The war was over, not with the destruction of but with their transformation. A new era was beginning. Ships, they moved forward. The battle turned. By the end of the 48th hour, the fleet had been forced back to the outer edges of the solar system. Supreme Leader Vex, facing certain destruction, made a choice. He ordered the fleet to retreat. They who had never retreated before turned their ships and fled from Earth. The Alliance fleet did not pursue. They were too damaged. They had lost too many ships, but they had won. Humanity had defeated the galaxy's most feared species. Weapons that matched technology in power, but weapons that attacked it in unexpected ways. Electromagnetic disruption devices. Virus packets that could corrupt ship systems. Armor-piercing ammunition designed specifically for hull composition. The Earth Defense Fleet was formed from volunteers. Millions of humans, knowing they might die, signed up to defend their world. Soldiers trained in new combat tactics. Pilots learned to fly in ways that confused tracking systems. Strategists studied ancient military history to find lessons they had never encountered. 4 months after Daniel's return to Earth, the preparations were complete. The Alliance was formed, the weapons were built, the fleet was ready. A messenger brought final news from Sage. The telepathic message was simple and clear. They have begun their journey to Earth. They will arrive in 3 weeks. They bring 30,000 ships. They believe they will find a young species that will crumble without resistance. Instead, they will find warriors from across the galaxy, united by a dream of freedom. Let them come. We are ready. Captain Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge of a new command ship, no longer the small exploration vessel Discovery, but the flagship of an alliance that spanned 100 worlds. He looked at the faces of his crew, both human and alien, united by purpose. They are coming, he said simply, and we will be waiting. E had done what he came to do. The Discovery raced toward a jump point that would take them away from the territory. As the ship made the jump to faster-than-light travel, Daniel finally allowed himself to breathe. They had saved Station Zeta. They had damaged the fleet, but they had also done something else. They had shown, though, that humanity could fight back. 3 days later, as the Discovery made its way toward the outer colonies, Daniel received a message from the Galactic Council. It was not congratulations. It was not thanks. It was a warning delivered with cold official language. By attacking the collective, humanity had violated the peace accords. By defending human lives against aggression, Earth had declared itself an enemy of the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Captain Daniel Hayes had just started a war that no one thought humans could win, and he had done it without even trying.